So at this time, I will entertain any questions you might have, and I will be happy to answer them. We're all roasting.
I have a question.
Yes, Dr. Miller.
Wonderful.
Thank you.
It may seem, obvious to you, but you had two treble instruments playing along in Mozart, and now a whole bunch of other instruments. So talk to us a little bit about how you decide with the piano how to fill in what isn't there from the other instruments.
How to fill in what isn't there. So in the Mozart in particular?
Just the difference between that and this, for example.
Oh, okay. So in the Mozart, I practically ignored what the winds were doing in the full orchestration and focused solely on the strings, so that I was playing what in the orchestra is a sound world and allowing them to fill in the wind world. Here was very different because in Britten's original orchestration, he actually kind of pairs the instruments or separates the instrument groups. Actually, at the top of Act 2, he specifically goes through all 12 tones by doing 4 separate chords, one with brass, and then winds, and then strings, and then percussion and piano. And so I used that as kind of the launching pad for creating this orchestration. So I had pairs of each type so that I could try and capture what Britten was after while still keeping it at a smaller ensemble. Does that answer your question?
Is it fair to say that if you're going to conduct, it's going to be more with your right hand because your left hand is always providing some extra bass no matter who's playing? Or is that?
It kind of went in and out. I was kind of all over the place in terms of some head nodding. There was some left hand throwing while I did something, and then right hand, and then I had to swap to harpsichord and more head nodding. So it kind of it kind of varied a lot. Yeah.
Very well done.
Thank you. Any other questions? Yes, Edith.
Why did you pick Britain?
Why did I pick Britain? Well, I have loved this score since the first time I did it in 2008, I believe. And I found that, I don't know, there's something about the music that speaks to me, and you always have to do something you're passionate about. And I found that this might be a great opportunity to do something like this, where you could bring the instrumentation much smaller, but still try and capture what Britten was after. And also, when you've got these resources available, you might as well use them. Any other questions? Yes?
If it's not out of keeping, could we hear from some of the singers as to how it was different for them? You had some musical rehearsals without the instruments?
Yes.
And then the musical rehearsal with the instrument.
So the first time that they heard the orchestra would have been last Monday, is that right? Last Monday? It was the second time the orchestra met, and I invited the singers to come. And then we had a Wandelprobe on Wednesday, and then a double dress rehearsal twice through on Friday. So please, if any of you would like to speak.
Often, what Mr. Rothmiller mentioned the soundscapes and the musical world of Britain is actually very instructive for us. Often we kind of rely on Britain's soundscapes in order to really understand either the motivation or the tempo or the meaning of a particular section of the piece. What was incredibly something of a masterpiece to your transcription of it to a smaller ensemble was that same level of setting remained in such a small ensemble. So I think that really speaks to your job well done. So that made it certainly miles easier for us to accomplish, thanks to that.
Yes.
Just in furtherance of this, in the Manolesco,
Yes.
we heard a timbre change in the soprano after the second time when she heard the solo before she came in. And you could hear the difference in her voice matching that color. Did you guys feel anything like that after singing with, the piano's wonderful, but it is very percussive. And so then when you hear a different instrument cueing you, did you feel that your voice shifted in timbre or intention or? Yeah.
I think you can, especially I think the difference for me was knowing what I could do with dynamic levels and what was going to be covered in the orchestration, what I could pare down or maybe have to give more in order to balance out the orchestra. And that wasn't something I had to necessarily consciously think about too much. It was just something that kind of comes with it, and so you just respond to the new stimuli you're hearing. But since the orchestra was so on top of it, it wasn't like a huge switch. It wasn't like we had drastically different tempos that we had to worry about or anything like that. So the transition was really easy.
I have one more question.
Yes.
In ideally, like if in any space you could imagine, would you vary the positioning of the orchestra?
I think with a bigger space, it would be a little bit more conducive to perhaps having the orchestra more on the stage and to the side. Like if you envision Kilburn, if there's perhaps orchestra to the right and then the space, just because the seats are also occupying stage space, it makes it a little bit more difficult in that way. But I know that as music director slash conductor slash everything, that I felt like I needed to be in a place where I could still connect with them, because I couldn't always just have my hands moving to cue who was coming in. I had to trust that they would be there, and that's a real testament to them learning this music, because it is, the Rustics sang 5 of the hardest pages in this score, in my opinion. So, yeah. Yes, Josh.
This may be a leading question. Do the singers, this is more of a question for the singers, and did you feel like you were, with the orchestra, did you feel like you were less naked to perform and felt more vulnerable? In terms of working with an ensemble apart from just a voice and a piano, did you feel like, in terms of dramatically, that having an orchestra with you, that helped you in any way? Can any of you comment on that?
I feel that having more of an orchestra as opposed to just piano makes us feel like we're more involved in an actual production of an opera. So I feel like it gets us a bit closer to what we're aiming for ultimately, and therefore I think we feel a little bit more comfortable than as opposed to if it were just voice and piano.
And I think it speaks to kind of the whole purpose of this, making, improving the opera scene's setting in academia, because oftentimes if you're rehearsing with the pianist, putting the whole staging together, like of an opera, and then you go, with this huge orchestra, like, and of any size, it can be overwhelming, and you're hearing all of these new sound worlds, like the question earlier, kind of things coming from percussion that you didn't hear before. And so if an opera scenes class is supposed to make us, as students, more prepared to make that, bridging that gap easier, if we're ideally going to be going out and performing a lot, that's definitely, this is a perfect example of how that happens, how that bridge is gapped, or gap is bridged. There it is.
Any other questions? Well, great. I would just love to end with a few thank yous. I have a list that I will go through very quickly. First, to Professors Neil Verone, Matthew Curley, and Jean Barr for serving on my committee. Thank you so much for being here. I very much appreciate it. To the entire voice and opera faculty for their continued and unwavering support. To Dr. Miller for being an invaluable diction and balance ears in our dress rehearsal. To Joshua Lau for his assistance with lighting, room reservations, and coordination of resources. To Michael Sherman for his expertise in sound and audio recording. To Cynthia Netsky, Susan Brown, and Eduardo Bellotti for their assistance with the harpsichord. To my friend Corey for listening to our Wandelprobe and supporting all aspects of this project. To Dr. Curley for his guidance in orchestration and his encouragement. To this amazing orchestra, who were willing to adapt on the fly with all of my changes, I thank you immensely for your hard work. To the incredible cast, who without question just followed me on this crazy journey and spent countless hours working on this music, and thank you. To my dear friend Yvonne Trobe for always being at my side, thank you. To the wonderful Emily Cook for believing in this project from day one and her undeniable talent and direction. To my best friend Edith for constantly, tried to get through this without crying. For constantly helping me with everything. Excuse me. To my family for always being a rock of support and traveling many, many miles to be here. Lastly, to Dr. Jean Moore. I could not have done it without you, and I thank you from the bottom of my heart. Thank you, everyone.